Director, Surging Women Employment in the Green, STEM and Care Economy. Dr. Nafissatou Diop, Director of the Sahel Women's Empowerment Demographic Dividend Program, West and Central Africa, and former head of Gender and Human Rights Branch, United Nations Population Fund. Ms. Riham El Ezaby, position is the head of Gender and Green Economy, EPP GIZ. And finally, Ms. Hyeshin Park, economist and gender program coordinator, OECD. And this session is moderated by Ms. Germaine Haddad, UNFPA Deputy Representative, Egypt. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon to the great audience who persevered until now with us. Thank you for coming. We believe you are true advocates for women and young people. I would like to welcome you all to the session on women and youth empowerment for inclusive development. We look at women's equality, empowerment, and development as a fundamental right, but also as a central element of overall development of a nation. Only through promoting human capital development, social justice, inclusive economic development, and maintaining healthy societies, nations thrive. So there is no better platform to hold such a discussion than the Population Health and Human Development Congress. We now live in a world of 1.9 billion young people, the largest youth cohort in human history. Being also in a region dominated by a young population, and as Egypt, a country with a large youth bulge of over 60 million young women and men, this on its own represents great prospects for the country to benefit from their prevailing demographic dividend. This can only materialize if the working age population capacities and capabilities are harnessed. Yet despite achieving high levels of education attainment for women, the region experiences low levels of labor force participation, and Egypt is no exception, with 16.2% women labor force participation. This all indicates the need for smart and more inclusive investments, requiring stronger partnerships, alliances, and collaborations. It also invites us to really look into the underlying social norms impacting the ongoing development efforts to maximize their benefits. I believe we have the perfect platform for this discussion in our panel today. The existing part, also I would like to mention that unlike other panels, maybe the exciting part here is that we will be looking at solutions that can also be adapted and replicated in other contexts. The panel is designed to showcase diverse global, regional, and country-level women and youth empowerment programs and models with diverse approaches adapted to the needs of women and girls in the context where they are being rolled out. Having on board also panelists and experts in the areas of science and technology, we will also get a glimpse at the evolvement in the contribution of women in these essential areas. We will also get a chance to learn more on the analysis of inequalities, how they emerge and perpetuate through systems creating gaps hindering the attainment of one's full potential. With that, we start with a round of a 5 minutes presentation of each panelist to give us a brief on the goal, scope, approach, and key results of their programs, followed by a round of questions addressed to each panelist. We will start with Dr. Nafissatou J. She is the director of the Sahel Women Empowerment and Demographic Dividend Project at UNFPA. She's an expert in social science and public health with over 25 years of rewarding experience advocating for gender equality, sexual and reproductive health services, and human rights. She was also the head of the Gender and Human Rights branch at UNFPA headquarters. She will present to us the Sub-Saharan Africa Regional Program, rolling out in 12 countries. It's a life cycle women's empowerment program emphasizing girls' education, sexual and reproductive health, and protection as essential elements in its design. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for being here. It's late, but we have quality. So, as I was presented, now my new assignment is back in my beloved continent, Africa, as a director of the Sahel Women Empowerment Program. And just to start by saying that in Western and Central Africa, we have the highest fertility rates and of the world, and we have one of the vast proportion of young people that German refer to, and of course adolescent girls. So I would like just to mention that the one important things that happened in 2013 was the recognition by head of states in several countries of West Africa that actually keeping girls in school is significantly a way to reduce child mortality and to reduce the fertility rates. And keeping girls in school and educating and empowering the girls is also clear that there is a strong correlation with all the other health issue, and particularly sexual and reproductive health issue, and that if we want to reduce maternal mortality, if we want to reduce gender-based violence, including child marriage, female genital mutilation, and all, we need really to focus on adolescent girls and ensure that they will have the skills, the agency, and the capacity really to live a different type of life. So this slide, the picture that you are seeing, which was a picture of the Secretary General at that time, and the World Bank director, president at that time also, plus the president of Niger at that time. So it was in 2013. And so they really identified the key issue or the issue of population growth as an important issue, and that if we want to have an economic growth and beneficiate from the demographic dividend, we need to act now on that adolescent girl and making sure that we will provide all the capacity that we can so she can really fulfill her own potential. And they decided, with the support of the UNFPA, the United Nations Population Funds, that they need to act on three components. So the first component is if we want to accelerate change in social norms, attitudes and behavior need to be improved for all the women and adolescent girls. So we need to have a strong social and behavior change work strategy campaign. Education for those in school, for those out of school. And I want to say that in West Africa, 60% of the girls are not attending secondary school. So this is a big challenge. The second component was about strengthening the regional capacity and availability of reproductive health services to really address particularly the issue of qualified midwives it was identified that the midwives, which are one of the really frontline workers, we need to increase the capacity of these midwives, we need to increase the number of midwives, and we need to make sure that they are placed where there are vulnerability, which means in a rural area. So the issue of relocation was very important. And then make sure that the products that save lives and the contraceptive products will be also available in those areas. And then the third one was about all the commitment to make the enabling environment, working with stakeholders, religious leaders, traditional leaders, political people to pass the law, to make a lot of reforms and make sure that we will be able to measure what this demographic dividend is about. So this is what happened. I want to say that the sweat started with few countries, but we are now in 12 countries, and the model is being replicated and in Eastern and Southern Africa. So what is the difference? It's not a project like the other one, because it is a project that where the funding is going directly to the government. And those are the national structure that are really implementing the program. So that capacity building of the national structure is a very important component. And I need to say that today, the countries are borrowing money to the World Bank in order to work on the human capital development. Oops, there is something that went wrong. Okay, I lost the most important slide. I don't know how come. It's the slide on the trajectories, but I'm going to explain to you. The way those slide, I don't know why it disappeared. So in that slide, this is very important to understand that there is two possibilities for an adolescent girl. There is the school and the trajectory where she will have economic opportunities and where she will get married probably later in the age, and then she can really contribute to economy, to the growth of the economic and all. And there is another path, which is a path actually where the cycle of poverty will be continue to be replicated. So I just want to say that in those, the strategies that are used is called the 4 E's. E for enhance, E for educate, E for empowerment, and E really for anything regarding employment. So 4 E's. So this is a model that is being used, and the slide disappear, to approach the issue. And when we talk about education, we are talking about creating the safe space within the school for sexual and reproductive health education. We are talking about mentoring, so there are some mentors within the school. Then we do have the maintaining the girls in school by providing food, by providing cash transfer, by providing transportation, bicycle, and also they can reach the school, by making sure that the girls that are not performing will be supported by a teacher during extra hours, for example, just to give you those kind of examples. When we talk about girls out of school, we are talking about the safe space within the communities with mentors and all, and where the education program on sexual and reproductive health is, and literacy, financial literacy, and literacy in general will last about 6 months for the sexual and reproductive health component. So this is a model that is being implemented to really empower the girls and make sure that those who are out of school will be linked to some financial opportunities, will be in vocational training, will provide some alternative income generating, and will be able really to increase and build that entrepreneurship mindset in order to improve the financial revenue and the financial revenue of the family. So just to end with a few results. Those results actually, we have seen that the project has reduced by half the number of school dropouts in secondary level, and that increased the retention rate in secondary schools move from about 80% to 96%. Early marriage has decreased almost by half in the area where the project has been implemented. And this can change completely the course of the nation. Contraception rates has increased among adolescent girls and young women. 11,000 midwives have been trained and deployed in rural remote area, and make sure that they have motivation in order to keep them in those areas. That has had an influence on the rate of births assisted by qualified personnel in, for example, a country like Côte d'Ivoire, where 50% only women used to give birth in health facilities, it has reached 75%. A country like Mali, from 15% to 28%. So these kind of results are clear data that show that this is working. And of course, we are not forgetting about 10,000 religious leaders, traditional leaders, musicians, the music, the culture, the theater, the poetry, and all, are all engaged into this strategy. And it has reached millions of people. About 4,000 safe spaces were established. 30,000 men were enrolled in what we call the husband school or the men's school, where they go also, they gather, and they talk about sexual and reproductive health issue and how they can support their wife or their partners in achieving, a good reproductive health life. So I will maybe mention that we had also put in place the Center of Excellence, where midwives and doctors are trained and nurses are trained. There is 3 centers of excellence where actually the pool of master in nursing, in obstetric and all is being, created and built. So the economic empowerment is the most difficult one. A lot of success in non-traditional vocational training, because we don't want the girls to only transform, food or, create soap or whatever. We want them to be electrician, mechanics, plumber, digital, all the coding that can, be also used today because there is all this new technology. And so that economic empowerment really has really created that entrepreneurship opportunities and be able really to manage their financial. So I will just stop there because of the time, and I will keep the rest for the next discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nafissatou. Thank you for stressing on the behavioral change in and out of school. It's crucial. And thank you for also stressing the power of the 4 E's, which we will come to in the round of questions. So now I invite Ms. Susanne Mikhail. She's the director of the Surging Women Employment in the Green STEM and Care Economy Regional Program, UN Women. She's also the former regional director of UN Women for Arab States. She will present to us the program she's managing, which is currently also in its first phase, being rolled out in 3 countries, as I understand, in the region, including Egypt. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon, colleagues and friends. It's such a pleasure for me to be with all of you here today. The program is actually rolling out in 12 countries, but with the first phase with 4 countries, Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, and Tunisia. Colleagues, there is a certain graph that many of us have seen before, and it actually is very closely related to the 4th E that you were alluding to, employment. And this is the focus, if you will, of my 5-minute presentation. The graph is the following. Let's see, do I just press here? So we see that most of the countries in the Arab States region have quite low levels of women labor force participation. At the bottom, you see Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, and Jordan, and the world is on the upper half, as you can see. Now, the issue with this graph is that it holds a paradox, an enigma, if you will. And that enigma is unique for the Arab States region. That while women labor force participation levels are relatively low, we have some of the highest levels of women education. So there's a discrepancy between high levels of women education but low levels of employment. In some faculties and fields, the proportion of women education in the Arab states is actually higher than anywhere in the world, such as STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Female graduates from STEM, the proportion in the Arab states is higher, again, than any other parts of the world. So it's a bit of a paradox, a question mark, why labor force participation then is so low. Now, of course, we know the reasons, and there's multiple of reasons. And for that reason, multiple interventions are needed at the same time, simultaneously. But Germaine alluded to solutions. There are actually solutions to low levels of women labor force participations, and some of them are very inspiring. In this graph, you can see a number of countries that have actually managed to surge, to jump, if you will, women labor force participation by more than 10% in less than 10 years. Mexico, Turkey, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia are just a handful of examples, but there are more than 20 countries worldwide that have seen this type of development. And it shows us that it is quite possible to see a jump in women labor force participation in a short period of time. The experience tells us the following, that there's a number of programs or roadmaps that need to be rolled out at the very same time, simultaneously, to help us see that jump in women labor force participation. And the good news is that most of these are already advanced in the Arab States region. 9 pillars, and I'm just going to conclude very shortly because of time. The first 2 elements that are necessary to jump in women labor force participation are so-called enablers. Without these 2 enablers, we're not going to be able to move an inch in this very field. The first is highest level national lead in the area of women employment. That means a head of state speaking clearly about the correlation of women employment and national development overall. And again, the good news is that you have that very explicitly and strongly in most of the Arab states region currently, and not the less in Egypt, in which we are standing right now. So you need that highest level political lead, and particularly with the focus of correlation between women employment and national development. We know that the region overall is losing around 570 billion US dollars per year because of this discrepancy between investment in education, but not reaping the fruit in the area or in terms of employment. Because as of course we all know, employment also gains taxes, revenues, purchasing power, etc. So there's a loss. The second enabler is sustainable financing. No country that has jumped in women economic empowerment or women labor force participation has done that based on ODA alone. So sustainable financing means concretely 3 financing streams coming in at the very same time. National budgets investments, international financial institutions and private sector, and of course with a component of overseas development assistance, or as we would say, ODA. So these two are enablers, and they're quite explicit in the countries that have jumped in women labor force participation. Then we have 4 accelerators. Those are the areas that helps us with speed to reach high level of women economic empowerment or women employment in a short period of time. And the flagship that is rolled out in the Arab state aspires to reach a 5% increase in women employment between now and 2030. So which are these accelerators that help
Can I have the slides, please? Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, honorable attendants and honorable panelists. Please, I want the slides. Can I get it from here or from where? From here, yes, it's okay. So I will talk about Egyptian women in science and technology, and I'm really proud to be an Egyptian scientist because since the pharaohs and before Christ, we have many female scientists, and up till now we have many female scientists. However, there was some years where it was bad for girls in the education. And sometimes the poor people said that we will not educate our girls and we have to educate our boys. But this is not the condition now. As we see, the number of female students are exceeding those of the males in the schools. And most of them in the universities are in the social sciences and humanities, but this is followed by the medical students. They constitute about 11% of the students in the universities, and consequently, the number of graduates from different universities. We have the female graduates comprises the majority, as they comprise 56.2% of the graduates. Of course, most of them are from the social sciences and humanities, as they comprise 74% of the graduates, and from the scientific field, they comprise about 26%. If we look for the scientific researchers, we find that since few years we were only 28 universities, and most of them were governmental universities, but now we have about 100 universities, and the number of private and the number of governmental is about the same. We have other scientific institutions, and every ministry have its own scientific institutions. In the Ministry of Scientific Research, we have 12 scientific institutions. However, I will talk about the number of researchers in the scientific, in the universities, in the governmental universities, we have 48% of the researchers are females. Regarding the private universities, 54% of the researchers in the private universities are females. In the scientific institutions, we find that 41% of the researchers are females. If we look for the females in different scientific fields, let me say the scientific fields now, we have that the high percentage is present in the medical field, where 47% are females. This is followed by the natural sciences, where 41% are females. In the engineering, only 20%, in social sciences, we find 48% are females, and in humanities, 45% of the researchers are females. This picture shows a condition which was found worldwide, and it is present also in Egypt. This conference, the first conference, was held in 1927, and this picture is known as the most intelligent picture because most of those who are in the first picture have took the laureate prizes of the Nobel Prize. And we find that in this conference, when they said to take a picture, most of them were men except one lady, and this lady is Marie Curie, and she was wearing the clothes of men. Nowadays, the same conference was held, and we can see that most of them or all of them were women except one man. This condition is not only worldwide, but it was here in Egypt. I think you all know Samira Musa. Samira Musa was from the Faculty of Science, and she was the first among all her colleagues. But at that time, the Board of Trustees of the Faculty of Science said it is impossible that a girl would be a demonstrator in the Faculty of Science. And at that time, Dr. Musharrafa was the president of the university, and he said, I will not be the president anymore except when Samira Musa will be a demonstrator in the Faculty of Science. So he backed her, and since then, we can see that the number of researchers, whether in a scientific university, a scientific faculty or not, the number of researchers is more or less about 50% in different universities. I was told not to exceed 5 minutes, so I finished now. I'm waiting for the questions at the end of this session.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for presenting this very inspiring last photo to give us all hope. So now we'll move to the last presenter. Last but not least, definitely, Ms. Hyeshin Parks. She's a gender program coordinator at OECD Development Center. She's an economist. She leads the gender team working on social norms and gender inequalities. Ms. Hyeshin will present the OECD's Social Institutions and Gender Index findings, which measures the gender discrimination across 179 countries and the key findings on the hidden drivers of gender inequality. I was asked that we wrap up in 5 minutes, but I asked for an exceptional 15 minutes to continue the round of questions. So unfortunately, I'll ask you to be brief, Ms. Hyeshin. Thank you.
Thank you, Germaine. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me today. So, when we talk about empowering women and youth, we're talking about something bigger than just the moral obligations. Yet, yes, of course, it is the right thing to do, but I think it's also a smart thing to do. Empowering women and youth is critical to building strong, inclusive economies and societies. But despite the progress we've made, gender inequalities are still everywhere. And what the worst part is that many of these inequalities come from things that we cannot even see. The invisible barriers that shape what men and women are allowed to do in their daily lives. These invisible barriers, as you see in this iceberg image, or what we call discriminatory social institutions, are really at the root of so many of the problems we can see on the structure and on the surface, like the gender pay gap or women being underrepresented in leadership. It's like the tip of an iceberg. Most of it is actually below the surface. And that is exactly what the Social Institutions and Gender Index, SIGI, helps to uncover. So for over a decade, as Germaine has already said, the SIGI has been measuring these hidden barriers in about 180 countries, looking at the laws, attitudes, and practices that limit women's rights and opportunities. Covers everything from family life to economic inclusion to politics that are needed for women and girls through their life cycle. And it's an official monitoring source for the SDG 5.1.1 together with the UN Women and the World Bank. So, but how does this play out in real life? First, let's look at the private sphere at home. In a lot of places, traditional gender roles still mean that women are expected to be caregivers while men are expected to be the main breadwinners. This means that on average, women are doing far more unpaid care and domestic work compared to men. In the MENA region, women are spending 6 times as many hours on these tasks as men. In Egypt, the number goes up to 9 times more. What does this mean for women and girls? It means less time for education, less time for skills development, and also fewer opportunities for paid work, all the things that could help them to build a future. On top of that, stigmas against working mothers persist. 70% of people in the MENA region think that children suffer when their mothers work for pay. Yes, limited access to childcare is an issue, but the data clearly shows how the underlying social beliefs hold women back. Now let's zoom in a little bit on education. In Cote d'Ivoire, for instance, our research shows that discriminatory social norms explain a lot of the gaps we see in educational attainment. When household resources are especially tight, parents tend to invest more in boys' education because they believe that that will bring more higher return than women's education. Girls, in the meantime, are expected to help out with household chores, leaving them with less time to study. And if early marriage comes into play, it can really cut a girl's education very short altogether. The positive takeaway from the research we found was that when parents actually make decisions together on their kids' schooling, girls tend to stay longer in school. But then even when girls get actually education, they still face hurdles, especially in the workforce. So discriminatory attitudes do not disappear once women enter the job market. In fact, 60% of people in the MENA region still believe that men make better business executives than women do. So no wonder women are underrepresented in leadership roles. And here's another layer. These social norms don't just hang around in good times, especially in the times of crisis. They get even more entrenched. When jobs are scarce, for instance, more than 70% of people in the MENA region think that men should have priorities over employment than women do. In Egypt, the number climbs up to 90%. So the research, we've already seen it before in the previous presentation. In 2023, Egypt had the labor force participation of women about 23%, and now that dropped to 16% in 2023. And these numbers actually tell that women are being left out of the economic recovery, which is a huge missed opportunity. So to wrap up, empowering women and youth is not just about fixing what is on the surface. We have to really tackle the root causes that are under the surface of the iceberg. And it is really about making sure everyone can contribute to society in a meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hishan. Thank you for stressing on the need to address the underlying social beliefs in our programs. They are very important. So now we go to a round of questions, and I will be addressing the first question to Dr. Nafissatou. You have presented a very comprehensive program that quite a large segment of women and girls need to be part of in these 12 countries. We are talking here about millions of girls. How can you bring the SWADE program to the scale needed to address the needs of these less advantaged women and girls in these huge numbers?
So thank you for the question. It's a difficult question, yeah, because the issue of scaling up is complex. Why? In the model that I described, it is actually, as you understood, a multi-sectoral approach. Because you have the girls who are in school, means that this is the responsibility of the Ministry of Education. You have those out of school, Ministry of Community Development, Gender, Social, etc. Vocational training, Ministry in charge of Labor, Ministry of Health for everything related to sexual and reproductive health, and I can go on, including the Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Economy, and all. So it's a lot of different sectors of the government that need to come together and work together. It's difficult, the coordination, and we need to remind that there is a coordination body of that, right? With a unit that is being created to support and impulse the different sectors to do what they have to do in the norms and standards, etc., including all the financial components, which is also very scrutinized by the World Bank. But what is the difficult element is now when you start and you want to scale up. That means that you cannot keep that national structure to a scale up process. So we need now to move into a kind of decentralized units, same unit coordinated at that level in order really to cover all the country needs, for example, all the region or governorate needs. So I will just stop there to say that this is feasible because there is already 4 countries who have scaled up. And we need to continue support them in understanding and measuring, if the quality of what they were doing in the third phase is as good as the quality of what they were doing in phase 2 and the sustainability of all that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nafissatou. I'll move now to Ms. Susanne Mikhail. You presented a very promising program with feasible solutions. Has these solutions been tried out before and tested? And what can make us confident that they are adapted to the needs in the region and will work to address the many gender inequalities mentioned today?
Thank you so much. And I'll be as brief as I can. I know we're running out of time. They have actually been tested on a pillar by pillar example. So, for example, UN Women, as you know, have worked with a number of governments throughout the region in terms of the amending laws pillar. And there we have seen a pretty impressive development. More than 20 laws in the area of women employment have been amended. To give a concrete example, in Morocco, a law was amended just a year ago in terms of equal representation in public enterprises. What does that mean practically? It means that 240,000 jobs that are in public enterprises and where 36% are women, there itself you could jump 140,000 employment for women in a short period of time. Egypt is a great example, and we have our colleagues from the Egypt country office as well, where we've worked on a financial inclusion program where the government of Egypt comes with the Central Bank of Egypt, with the National Council of Women in Egypt, particularly in the rural areas, where more than 100,000 women have been reached in terms of a dual intervention, both identification cards as well as opportunities to save in banks. And in some of those areas, women's saving had actually jumped 3 times. And of course, that brings great opportunities for starting businesses, for example. The last example, just to give you on the private sector component, as I was alluding to, more than 650 private companies in the region have signed the Women Empowerment Principles, and those companies that have signed on meritocratic recruitment system, some of them have jumped in terms of women employment more than 20%. But I just want to say one last thing, also alluding to scale, because scale here is critically important. And I cannot emphasize as much as you did, Dr. Nafissa, just a second ago, the value of coordination to ensure that these thousands and even 100,000 or more can jump to, in this case, a 5% increase of women employment, which equates to 500,000 jobs, really. So unless we work, and we've tried out a number of different models, but really the only model that works is that multidisciplinary approach, where a number of interventions are rolled out at the same time and very, very well coordinated. And the last accelerator to scale is really to capitalize, optimize on already existing opportunities. I think at the UN, we're quite good and solid in terms of addressing challenges, but it's equally about seeing what are the opportunities in this country, in this region, that we can capitalize and optimize on to help us surge in terms of numbers. You were alluding to the STEM graduate since years back. It's not a new phenomenon either. So again, capitalizing on the high level of education amongst women, and even capitalizing on some of the very progressive social norms that we see. And I want to finish by saying a recent survey by UN Women shows that there's a number of social norms that we want to look at in depth, but one very exciting one is that more than 72% of men in the Arab states region actually want to spend more time with their children, only if they had enough time to do so. So you capitalize on the positive social norms as well.
Thank you. Okay, we now move to Riham. We need 6 minutes. We have 3 questions. We need 6 minutes. I think we can. Yeah, thank you. Now the negotiations is an important part of getting women ahead. So, Ms. Riham El Ezaby, for a country like Egypt with a huge youth bulge and a large number of young people ready to enter the job market every year, you have presented a very important program. Yet, I imagine you must face a number of challenges in promoting technical education instead of formal university education. Is there social acceptance and eagerness from the side of the young people? How can one continue to increase the demand for the enrollment in technical education programs and the supply of jobs for graduates? Sorry, it's a tough one, and you have.
Yes, it is. But let me focus on one very important point here. Unlike what we all know, I mean, we think that people tend to enroll in the general education, but actually, according to the last statistics from CAPMAS and even the World Bank reports, 52% of the enrollment rate of the students in Egypt went for the technical education, not the general education, after the preparatory. However, I would emphasize more on the social perception. Yes, there is a problem in the social perception regarding the technical education, and as we have seen it's one of the pillars, very important pillars. And in GIZ, we support heavily the ministry in trying to improve this social perception through our pre-orientation program that was intended for I actually piloted it in the previous phase, and we are extending on it right now, and it's targeting the preparatory school students in the years 8 and 9 and their parents before they take the decision and enroll in any of the systems. So they need to know a lot. I mean, we give them full information about all kinds of education, technical education and the general education, and the different educational path that they will go through, as well as career path. So we give them full information, and through interactive activities, through job fairs, through visits to schools and factories and private sector. So it's very important to include the parents, the communities, in order to be able to have well-informed decisions in favor of the students, as well as also we are now gearing into even improving the health of the technical education students and give them more information about this.
Thank you. Thank you. We move to Dr. Nadia. We were very happy to see this heartwarming final slide. So, is it really rosy in the fields of science and technology, or I mean, are these opportunities availed to women across Egypt, or there are challenges still to be addressed?
Okay, it's not that rosy. It's rosy regarding the percentage of females in the different fields, but it's not rosy as females do not access leadership positions. And maybe now it's much more better. We have many initiatives by the National Council for Women, like She Leads, like by the president, like the Presidential Leadership Program, and so on. So now, let me say that this year about 18 deans were appointed in Ain Shams University alone, and this is marvelous, of course. Also the strategy, the sustainable strategy, there were 4 pillars that discussed how to empower women in the field of social field, in economic field, in leadership field, and other fields. There were some prizes and awards which were devoted to the women specially, and this maybe men disagree for that and say, why is it devoted for the women? It is a sort of discrimination, but really it's a positive discrimination, because for a long time women didn't take the right to have these awards and these leadership positions.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
You're welcome.
The final question. So this is the final question. So, Ms. Hyeshin, I come to you at the end of this discussion. What would be your recommendations to governments and other partners to ensure that there is progress towards rights-based social transformation? In other words, how can we strengthen addressing the underlying social norms beyond these specific women-focused programs to go into the level of strategy and policy?
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I think in any case, Susanne's presentation on the 9 pillars, that's exactly something that we are very much into as well. I want to focus on 2 things only. One, engaging men and boys. Gender equality shouldn't be a threat, shouldn't be seen as a threat to boys, and men, because in that case, they cannot really be the allies for gender equality. So this is something that is very important to have them in the discussion. The other thing, second thing, is that social norms change is very hard because I, as an individual, might be supporting gender equality or women's empowerment. I might actually think my neighbors or my societies are much more conservative and not as supportive for gender equality. So you might actually get it very wrong, like where you live in terms of social norms and so on. So we really need to create spaces where people feel comfortable challenging these norms and realizing that desire for gender equality is shared more widely. So I will stop there.
Thank you. I would like to thank you all. I learned a lot. It was really eye-opening, and I hope all the participants have learned from this very important session. Thank you. And closing on time. Or-
Thank you. Thank you so much for participating in today's session. We hope the discussions inspired valuable insights and ideas for your work. We look forward to welcoming you back tomorrow for another full day of engaging sessions and collaborative dialogue. Have a great evening.
You were great.